Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rule Classroom Live. I'm Albert Liu, here with new interviews with you every week with experts such as Rick Rule, Joe Mazumdar, Adrian Day, Joel Littman. I'm glad you could join us today because today I have a very special guest, and that is my old friend, Doug Casey from Casey Research, formerly, but now from the International Man, which is actually a blast from the past. Doug, it's good to see you. How are you doing?
Good, good, Albert. It's nice to see you too. I'm normally in South America, either Uruguay or Argentina, but at the moment I'm on the shores of the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia,
Very nice.
in the dying days of summer. Nice place to
Yeah.
be.
How long do you usually stick around in the Northeast?
I like to be here for the northern summer, and
Yeah.
then when the seasons change, I like to be in the southern hemisphere for the southern summer. I
Yeah.
mean, why deal with cold and winds and short days and snow? Who needs that stuff?
Yeah. If you don't have to, why would you? Why
Yeah.
would you? I actually miss seeing you at all the conferences that we used to attend together. But I understand if one has more productive things, perhaps more comfortable things to do with their life. I understand,
Well,
but I do miss you.
yeah, I've kind of been there and done that as far
Absolutely.
as,
I can definitely see that.
conferences. So,
Uh, Definitely see that. But thanks to the great innovations of video conferencing technology, social media, and whatnot, the show keeps going. We don't have to be in person all the time to talk about these ideas. And we have a really great topic today, Doug, because we're going to talk about one of your projects that, for as long as I've known you, you've been talking about and expressed passion about. And I want to share a story with the viewers. This is years ago, Doug, and I hadn't known you very long, but we'd met, and then I wanted to subsequently establish the LinkedIn, some kind of social media connection with you. So I went to LinkedIn, I typed in your name, results came up, and you know the way these things are, Doug. You don't know, at least before, it was difficult to verify the authenticity of a given profile. Anybody can create an account with anyone's name, and you'd never know if it was true. So I thought, well, how do I know that this person I found is the real Doug Casey? And under education, it said misallocated 4 years of at Georgetown University. And at that point, I was better than any blue or green check mark. I knew I had the right guy. So, so the topic today is your new book. Let me put it on screen here. It's called The Preparation. It's a book that you co-authored with Matthew Smith and Maxim Smith. And it has to do with the topic of education and college, in particular, people of college age. And you have a very strong opinion when it comes to this. And maybe you could just start off by just explaining what this book is and what the message is and why you did it.
well, like you said, and I haven't been on LinkedIn for so long, I'd almost forgot that that's what I said. But I figured that even while I was in college, that it was a misallocation of my time and the money that was being spent to go there. And in those days, college wasn't that expensive anyway. But then after I've been out in the world some more, I determined, wait a minute, I didn't really get anything out of my 4 years in college. It was not just a misallocation, it was a waste of time. And then as time went on, I figured, no, it was worse than a waste. It was actively destructive to both my financial and moral and intellectual progress. And for years, frankly, I've been threatening to write this book, The Preparation, which is about what a young man should do instead of going to college. Because you go to college today, you're going to be jumping into a cesspool of wokeism and cultural Marxism and leftism and activism, all kinds of really stupid things. Uh, so, but what do you do if you don't go to college? Because uh, when you graduate from high school, you basically don't know anything. All you're qualified for is a dead-end job or working at McDonald's or maybe going to a trade school, which is okay. That's helpful. Or you can join the military, or maybe you just sit in your mother's basement and play video games and watch porn. So young men at age 18, especially in today's world, have a real problem on their hands. So most of them from a middle class background anyway, go off to college. It's kind of a halfway house for them on the way to being an adult, they think. And it's it's a big mistake. These are the four most important years, I would say, of most young men's lives, and they waste it hanging around and drinking beer and chasing girls. And okay, it's fun to do all those things. That's great, but you can have a lot more fun and gain a lot more for it. And what we're trying to do in this book, the preparation, is show that during those 4 years, you can actually transform yourself into a Renaissance man and have a leg up on life instead of like everybody that goes to college being behind the eight ball with tens of thousands, 100,000 or more of debt, plus the money that your parents have spent to help you along, and getting bad habits and not learning anything that's useful. So that's what the preparation is about. It's about learning everything that you should learn, but probably don't, from getting a Bachelor of Arts degree, as well as a Bachelor of Science degree, which is to say biology, chemistry, physics, and so forth, plus an MBA. We think we can take all of those things into the 4 years, in addition to actually going out in the world and learning real how to do it skills that make you valuable. So that's it in a nutshell, I guess, Albert.
So, I'm really interested in this topic. I had, I wouldn't say the same experience as you, but I saw what was going on. I went to school, a little bit later than you did, and now I have a child that's nearing that age. So I'm intensely focused on this myself too. And so for that reason, we've actually divided this program into two. So this is part one with Doug Casey. And then next week, I'm going to have your co-authors, Matthew and Maxim, on to talk about the nuts and bolts. And the reason I did it that way is because I wanted a chance to talk to you about big picture stuff, and the reasons and whatnot, without getting into all the details, of which there are many in this book, including an extensive reading list and projects and whatnot, and the personal anecdotes of Matthew's son, who's actually proceeded to like sort of engage in this program. But for Doug, I want to talk to you about this. Now, you specifically make a point of carving out STEM as like a little exclusion from this prescription. Can you talk about why?
Yeah. If you're going to go to college, it does serve a useful purpose for certain things. If you take STEM courses, science, technology, engineering, math, college can be helpful. Lab courses. Nobody's got a lab in their house. Law courses, medical courses. I mean, these are formal disciplines that are harder to learn on your own. And STEM, of course, the trouble with even taking STEM, which is the very few kids take that today. I think only like 10 or 15% of college students take STEM. Most of them take basically soft courses like English literature or philosophy or sociology or, God forbid, gender studies. But so for the people that do take STEM, yeah, college can serve a useful purpose, but you're still getting a one-sided application, even education, taking STEM, because there's a a lot that you should be learning and doing that you're not, becoming over specialized as a STEM guy. But that's the most valuable part of college for those that do take it, I think.
Yeah, I remember there was an economist named Walter Williams
Yeah, sure.
out of George Mason.
Yep.
And I remember in the 90s, he once said, because it's not like people weren't studying STEM, it's that Americans had given up on studying STEM. And he said, if you go to a typical science course in one of these fine universities we have in Boston or Cambridge or whatever, you're going to find like 9 out of 10 people are like not from this country. I don't know if it was exactly 90%, but it was something like that. And then he says, well, where are they? They're studying government and sociology and psychology and all gender studies and all the things you say, which have become, I would agree with you, Doug, a liability. And I agree in reading. I haven't finished the book, Doug, but I've gotten a fair bit into it. I have to say, I pretty much agree with everything you guys are laying out here. But there's one thing, there's maybe two things that I'll say. And you actually acknowledge one of them, is that this is a different time. You went to school in 1968.
That's when I graduated. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a different time, and you went to a very good school. I don't know if people know this, but Bill Clinton was one of your classmates. Not that you would necessarily brag about that, but this is where the people who were going places went at the time.
Yeah, it was one of them, right?
Yeah, and I think that your book is much more valuable now than it would have been back then, because of something that came out, and actually a joke that Chris Rock made at one point. You know Chris Rock, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
big fan of Chris Rock.
He has this thing with Will Smith and his wife now, but long before that, there was a little bit of a controversy in that Will Smith's wife was boycotting the Oscars, and I don't know what the reason was, but I think it had something to do with inclusivity or something like that. Anyway, she was making a public campaign to boycott the Oscars. Chris Rock happened to be emceeing the Oscars that year, and he went on stage and he said, look, Ms. Smith boycotting the Oscars is like me boycotting Rihanna's panties. He says, I wasn't invited. So back in 1968, most people weren't invited to go to schools like Georgetown, and this whole topic would be moot, actually. But something between then and now has changed, and society has this idea that every single person has to go to college. Isn't that the big problem? It's become a big racket now.
Yeah. Yeah, the experience has become very degraded. And everybody, look, things that everybody has and things that everybody does are generally not worth doing and having because they're too easy. And I'm a believer. Inclusion is supposed to be what we're supposed to have today. No, I don't believe in that. I think that things that are exclusive are better, that keep out the riffraff. And I'm not talking about people that come from maybe a lower middle class background. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the intellectual riffraff that wants something for nothing and think that college is like a magic certificate that will put them on the gravy train for the rest of their lives. And in the past, if you got a college degree, it showed that you at least had the discipline to go to the classes and pass the tests and jump through the hoops. But today, everybody that goes to college passes their classes. And generally speaking, kids want the degree at the end. They're not interested so much in the knowledge along the way that might be gained. They cram for exams. So that's why, at best, college is a misallocation of your time. You can do much more and much better things than go through a production line, an indoctrination line, which is what everybody's doing today. So no, a college degree is not worth anything anymore. I mean, everybody's got one. It's like having a grade school degree. Everybody's got one. It's just expected, and everybody knows that it's a scam. You're not really getting anything out of it. You're just going through the paces, and you're stupid enough to pay a whole bunch of money, which is like an albatross around your neck for many years into the future. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think at today's prices and the quality of the education, it's really a slam dunk in your favor, Doug. It's really hard to justify spending that amount of money on the programs that are on offer today. But I want to quibble with one other small point. I understand where you're coming from in terms of carving out, say science and technology and math as perhaps one area where you would want to study. I mean, if someone is, for example, going to operate on my brain, I don't want the self-taught person who's learning on YouTube. I want the best out of Johns Hopkins or Harvard or wherever. But I would argue for the person who is serious about studies in non-science or technology areas, college would have made sense at one point when there were serious people going, and when the institutions were serious about teaching that subject matter, because it's very difficult, I think, human beings to learn any topic on our own. I think a certain amount of I guess self-analysis is important, but there's a tradition of the seminars, like, you know what I mean? That you need other people to learn. That's how we best learn anyway, in my opinion.
I understand. There are advantages to going to school because it's the discipline that makes sure that you actually see that what's on that page, because you're all opening the page together in the textbook. And it's the structure to make sure that you don't skip over something. All that's quite correct. So college can serve a useful purpose for all of those things. But the experience has been degraded. And I would say that, look, one of the problems, even under the best of circumstances, which you just described, is that maybe your professor is not that great. Maybe he's past his sell-by date. Maybe he's bored with giving the same lecture every year for decades. As far as the academic part of the preparation, I'm a big believer in the teaching company, for one, because they've gone out of their way to select the best professors in whatever subject, and these professors give a command performance because they're going to earn a royalty on it forever. And it's really good. It's really entertaining. And unlike a lecture that you have in a lecture hall in a college, it's in the ether. The professor says something, if your mind wanders or if you cut the class, you're not going to hear it. But it's better to have a superb command performance that you can listen to several times to get the material down. So this is actually a better way. Now, it takes some self-discipline on the part of the student, but if the classes are that well taught, and they are, they're entertaining. Learning is fun. It's mind-opening. So your objection is quite correct, Albert, and I agree with it. But I think that in today's world, where all of the information of human experience is basically available on your computer, presented in an entertaining form, it obviates a lot of that objection you just made, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I don't use that particular teaching platform, but I'm absolutely going to look into it now. But I agree with you, and I think one of the things that young people face is this dilemma between attending for knowledge and attending for credentials. I remember years ago, Peter Schiff was doing a podcast once, and he went to UC Berkeley, and I think he studied economics, and he acquired a skill of like basically telling the professors what they wanted to hear, and then immediately unlearning it, which is just a tremendous waste of time, right? But he said, look, if I really wanted to learn economics, I wouldn't have gone to a place like UC Berkeley. It was all about the credential. And actually, even Murray Rothbard, I remember in a Q&A or in a lecture, someone asked him, where should I go to school? And this would have been, I don't know, probably in the 70s or 80s or something like that. And even he said, go for the credential. Don't expect to learn everything you need to know, but if you're going to go for the credential. I think it's a tough decision. Once you're in middle age or you're established in a career, or if you're retired, you can, I mean, it's a no-brainer. You go for the knowledge, right? And credentials are meaningless at that point. I think young people have a harder time.
Well, look, going for a credential directs you the wrong way. It rubs me the wrong way, certainly, to have to get a credential. What? To what? To prove to yourself or that you did it, or to prove to other people? Because the fact of the matter is, in my experience, nobody looks at your degree or cares about your degree. Maybe it's helpful to getting your first job, but after you get your job, it's how you can perform and what you actually know and can do that makes the difference. So, especially in today's world where artificial intelligence is literally changing everything. I mean, what's going on with AI right now is as big as the Industrial Revolution itself of over 200 years ago. And a piece of paper on the wall means nothing, especially as people don't like, generally speaking, don't like to say this out loud, but uh, college and its degrees have become degraded and they don't mean anything. Look, I've been riding this hobby horse for a long time, Albert. Uh, when I first got lucky in the business world with my second book, Crisis Investing, which was a big bestseller in 1980, Phil Donahue, who was huge in those days, he was the Oprah of his day, had me on his show. And the people, all by myself, on the day before the national elections with Reagan and Carter. That's when I was on. And uh, the audience generally liked me and what I was saying. I got lots of applause. But of course, audience applause, it's like the Shakespeare play Julius Caesar, where Antony gives a lecture, they all clap, and then Brutus talks to them and they clap for him too. They're swayed easily. But anyway, there are two things that I said where the audience booed me, which was pretty unusual on that show on that time. One, where I got as far as giving them 4 of the 5 reasons why I wasn't voting the next day in the election. And the other one was I was telling them, don't go to college. Even back then in 1980, I was saying that. So, but now it's more serious, and the audience wouldn't boo me anymore if I said that, breaking that education bubble where they all thought that education was the key, or a diploma, which is different from an education, was the key to success.
You know, Doug, so I've seen that episode. I think thanks to Jeff Berwick, who was able to track it down and put it on YouTube. That's very entertaining talk show. And like you said, it was you weren't necessarily doing that to incite the audience. That was not typical back then, but it became typical. And now I'm wondering if some producers were watching that episode and thinking, wow, we could get a lot higher ratings if we get the audience more excited about what people are talking about. Because in the 80s were filled with shows that seemed to be deliberately trying to provoke the audience in that way.
Oh, it was the era of Jerry Springer, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, they may have seen something there in terms of how excited people were getting. But it is interesting when just a statement of fact, or you know, just a comment like you made about why you weren't voting or going to college or thinking that you should go to college would be so controversial. I mean, these must be ideas that are held dearly to the average person.
Yeah, they are. But maybe that was the America that was back then. And the country has changed a great deal in the last 45 years. It's quite a while. It's actually not the same country that it was back then. And it's changing even more radically now, today. And not for the better. I think the country is fraying around the edges. And one of the reasons why a young man should follow the path we lay out here in the preparation is that we don't really have any idea what the world is going to be like 5 or 10 years from now. And getting a conventional diploma with basically, as 85% of people do, BS subjects, which are not just wrong, but just dead wrong. You're not qualifying yourself to survive in a world which is going to change radically uh, in the years to come because of lots of things, because of artificial intelligence is one. It's going to obviate many, many degrees. And of course, a lot of people think if they get a college education, it's like going to trade school for for intellectual stuff, which is wrong. It's the wrong kind of concept to start with. But I'm still of the opinion, more fervently than ever, that we're going to have a massive, truly massive economic and financial upset in the years to come. And I'm not even talking about what's looking like a civil war of some description here in the US, and possibly World War III, which would be really serious. Uh, and the point that I'm making is that in an unstable world where the US government is manifestly bankrupt, which it is, and falling apart, uh, you can't do conventional things to qualify yourself for life in the future. Well, that's what we're trying to show you in this book. By the time you finish the preparation, you've not only learned 13 or 14 or 15 practical skills to do stuff, but intellectually, you've learned much more than, in point of fact, you would have in college. Plus, we're trying to ensure that you pick up a lot of ancillary skills, everything from learning to actually speak a second language, not just take second language courses in college. I mean, I took French for 2 years in high school and 2 years in college. When I got to when I got to France, I couldn't carry on a conversation, but I think we solved that problem. Uh, Learn to do things to allow you to socialize with different groups. Learn to play proper chess. Learn to play proper Go. Learn to play bridge. Learn to play poker. Learn to learn to scuba dive. Learn to fly. And most important, actually, is young men today need a trial by fire. They need a grand adventure. They need a hero's journey. They need something to, uh, historically, in all societies, young men have had to go through uh, something that proves that they're worthy. That doesn't happen today. College doesn't prove that you're worthy of anything except BSing the professors into giving you a passing grade and getting something to hang on the wall so that you can get a job. That's something else that you shouldn't be doing, looking for a job. It's a degrading concept. It puts you at the effect of other people. You want to be at cause of your own life. We're trying to direct people to be entrepreneurs, self-employed, basically. So there's all kinds of bases that we're trying to cover in this book.
Doug, there's a couple good quotes in your book. One of them is from Aristotle, and he's talking about the difference between uh, the types of proficiency, so scientific knowledge versus educational acquaintance. Can you talk about those two, and then are we building generalists here? Is that part of the point of the book?
Yeah,
What is your feeling on that?
yeah, it is, frankly. Look, one of the things that I draw to people's attention in a couple of books, actually, uh, speaking to what you just said, uh, Robert Pirsig wrote a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And one of the points that he makes in that book was that an ill-educated, greasy-haired, ignorant motorcycle mechanic, if he wants to be competent as a motorcycle mechanic, will eventually, hopefully, figure out that when he's torquing down a bolt on the motorcycle's head, he has to know a little bit about physics, about metallurgy, because metal, it's steel against aluminum, perhaps, this type of thing. And as he gets interested in learning about something practical like the metallurgy of his bike, he might learn about physics. And he learns about physics, he'll learn about chemistry. And chemistry will lead him to biology and then on to physics, and physics leads him to philosophy. And before we know it, the humble motorcycle mechanic transforms himself into being a Renaissance man. And he's a generalist because he doesn't have the depth of a scientist, deeper and deeper into narrower and narrower areas, but he's got a grasp of a broad array of things so that you know enough to be able to make intelligent judgments on a broad array of things, as opposed to being completely ignorant or just superficially knowledgeable. We take it to the next level, hopefully, in this 4-year period, because after all, how much can you learn about how many different things in 4 years? So that you have a working knowledge of a lot of things that enable you to pursue any of them in further depth later on as the case requires. I think that's the point that Aristotle was making. At least that's how I interpret it.
Yeah, and this educational acquaintance has a very practical application, because he goes on to say, like, or you paraphrase perhaps, um, educational acquaintance means you have a sound enough grip on the basics to allow you to tell the difference between sense and nonsense. And that's very important in your efforts to navigate the world, right? You have to
Oh,
know, you need to know enough that you can tell, when you're being fed nonsense.
well, exactly. I mean, we're inundated with stuff from the media. And what do we get on the media? We have some talking head, some person that's got good looking hair and speaks well, is basically telling you something. And you have to know enough to be able to recognize sense from nonsense, even if it's being presented in a very rhetorically convincing way, the way anchor men and women do today. So yes, that's right. Just to live in today's world with so many things happening in so many places, you've got to have a broad degree of knowledge. You've got to be an autodidact, frankly, just to interpret what's going on around you, as opposed to being one of the competence, which the Romans said that's the head count. They're just, people. We What the Romans called the competence, we call them NPCs today. Is that non-playable characters? You don't want to be one of those.
um, on the specialist thing, though, because I agree with what you're saying. At the same time, you did mention sort of the rise of AI, and I think AI is making general knowledge available to all people with just the keystrokes, or even just with a few words on a verbal um, oral interface. Um, don't you think that what he's calling scientific knowledge, but let's just broaden that to talk about specialist knowledge, is very important. If I look at you, Doug, you are that person who has that broad base, but also you've become a specialist in certain areas.
Yeah.
I'll just give you an example. Investing in junior mining stocks, that is not an everyday sort of general knowledge endeavor. This is an area that if you don't have specialized knowledge, you're going to get your head handed to you. Also, you've become a prolific writer, and this is specialist knowledge. When I read your books, like the one I was reading this week, it takes a lot of skill to make something like this so easy to read. There's a saying by I forget what his name is. I can't. He wrote a very famous book on the English language, and he says, "Look, easy writing makes difficult reading." And vice versa. So there is tremendous value in specialized knowledge, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And the way you interpret these things and put them together, I think one of the most valuable skills that you can develop and you will develop in the process of the preparation, I think, is critical thinking, which is basically uh, knowing enough to ask questions and interpret the answers to the questions, and then ask other questions from what you're told and ask further questions. Uh, and of course, the more deeply you go down that rabbit hole asking questions, getting to the bottom of things, the more specialized you're becoming. But critical thinking is important, but you can't think critically without some basis of broad knowledge to see how things relate to each other. Uh, and we're trying to solve that problem too. One way that we try to solve the problem of critical thinking is we urge everybody that engages in the preparation to go on Substack and get a public blog where they hold themselves to account and write about what they're doing. That serves several purposes. Number one, it holds you to account because you're putting what you're doing or not doing on paper. But as you put it on paper, it has to be readable. And practice makes perfect with writing, like with anything else. So we're trying to, I don't know if I'm answering the question directly, but we're trying to cover all these bases to the limited degree or to the greatest extent we can in the 4 years of the preparation. Because you go to college, and the fact is 80% of your time in college is just hanging out with the guys and BSing and drinking and dating and goofing off, uh, frankly, avoiding work, which is the boring classes that you're assigned in sociology and psychology and political science and things which are basically nonsense. Anyway.
Yeah. Just remember, the book I'm thinking about is called The Careful Writer. I still can't remember the author's name, but it's old school book on writing. Very good. Let's talk a little bit more about doing versus having, because I think that's a very important distinction, right, Doug?
Yeah. Yeah. I make a big deal out of the fact that there are the three most important, we haven't talked about this so far, have we? The three most important verbs in any
No.
language. They're be, do, and have. And unfortunately, Americans today emphasize the have. got to have lots of money, got to have a good job, got to have a good-looking girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. That's standing reality on its head, because the only way you get to have stuff is by doing stuff. Doing stuff, which means skills, abilities, uh, able to accomplish things. That's all about doing in the material world. But the real reason you want to do things is not to have things, although that's a consequence of doing things. It's to be something. And what you really want to do, to the degree you can, in the 4 years that most people just piss away in college, is to transform yourself into the kind of man you want to be, the actual essence of character. And that's something also that you can only get by doing. So it's important to look at these three verbs and how they relate to each other. And to be the kind of man you want to be, you have to do stuff. And then, as a happy consequence, you'll have stuff. But people have it all backwards.
Okay, later in the book, you say, don't be afraid of virtue. And I like that you point out that some people are gonna flinch at the word, but it's only because of
Yeah,
the modern context of
yeah,
the word. And I think when that happens, it's just an indication that you've absorbed too much of the propaganda that's swirling around, and perhaps lost track of what things used to mean.
yeah. What are virtues, actually? I mean, uh, when people think of virtue today, they think of a namby-pamby, goody-goody, uh, going to church, uh, and they think virtues are things like faith. I don't think that's a virtue. I believe in critical thinking, which is kind of the opposite of faith, and hope. Uh, Hope is like a sign of desperation, and charity. Well, charity, I believe more in justice than charity. So let's throw out those virtues and let's look at the Roman virtues, which would include courage and temperance and justice. Those kind of virtues are what you want to develop. And the idea behind doing the right things is that you want to become what might be called a stand-up guy, person that can be relied upon to do the right thing and not, and be able to do the right thing in addition. So that's the kind of virtue that I'm talking about.
Um, Before we move on, I want to move on actually to the nuts and bolts a little bit and set up what will be the second part of this discussion next week with Matt and Maxim. I really enjoyed your the little paragraph you wrote about Zen and the art of motorcycle, because I personally I kind of did this in reverse, Doug. I studied all the sciences and math, uh, became an engineer, was working for over a decade, and then asked a different question like, there's got to be something else. And I went out and became a motorcycle mechanic for a couple of years.
Oh,
So I traversed
is
that
that a
path in
fact?
reverse.
I didn't know that. That's very good, Albert. That's
Yeah.
funny.
But that was a very fun, a sojourn. It was a little of a detour in my life. Um, but actually that introduced me more to philosophy than any of my studies had, because that was the missing part, and I think that's what that book sort of was about, was pursuing the missing parts of your consciousness and your education. So that was cool. um, but the last thing I want to talk to you about is how this personally relates to you. I wonder, like, sort of the genesis of embarking on this project, because many of us can see what you see, Doug, in terms of the declining quality, in terms of the tremendous burden, financial burden this puts on students and parents. But not all of us are out writing books about it. So you obviously feel more I guess, strongly about this. And the interesting thing is, yes, you misallocated, according to your own assessment, 4 years, but your life turned out pretty darn good, right? And I wonder if you thought about this, because I know you're into science fiction books and movies. I recall an episode of Star Trek where the captain is given the opportunity to go back in his life and change certain events, given his sort of, mature and moral, ethical convictions at the time as an older man. He goes back and makes some changes to his life in part of a simulation. And then at the end of it, realizes that he didn't become the man that he became. And in
Hmm.
fact, he despised the person that he had become after making those changes, and said that he would rather die than continuing to live as that person. And I guess there's the point of it was twofold. Obviously, everyone makes mistakes. That's where growth comes from. The other thing is, the episode was called Tapestry. Um, and the message they were trying to send was, if you tug at one thread in the tapestry, you risk sort of unraveling the entire tapestry of your life.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. And that's, of course, one of the reasons why I love science fiction. Science fiction is, as a genre, is very, very underrated by the pointy-headed intellectuals that populate the New York Review of Books and things like that. They consider sci-fi kid stuff, but for just the reasons that you pointed out, it's actually great. Incidentally, uh, I'm a equally great fan of Western movies because if sci-fi tends to examine certain aspects of life and morality, which you just pointed out, uh, Westerns are all morality tales that examine basically what's right and wrong, good and evil, man, woman, birth, death, sun, earth, things like that. Uh, so those are my two favorite genres, actually. Uh, but wait a minute, I don't know if I answered the question. Well, yeah,
Pertaining to your own life, Doug,
yeah,
I
yeah.
worry if you were given that opportunity, you would have not gone to college and then gone out and got yourself killed
Anything could,
somewhere.
listen, when you're young and you don't know anything, you come to a fork in the road and you take it and you go right or left. You don't know which and where they lead and so forth. I mean, when I think about the things that I could have done and wanted to do and almost did, I mean, it is kind of kind of shocking. I'm one of those guys who easily could have wound up when I was in Europe going to Marseille and presenting myself to the French Foreign Legion and see if they would have accepted me. They probably would have. It's hard to get into the Legion today, most people don't know that. They're actually quite selective. They don't just take hardened criminals and that. But I could have done all kinds of things and almost did because I was at loose ends. I was at loose ends. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah,
Or may
I think
or maybe there are many paths up the mountain. And as long as you keep climbing the mountain, you'll arrive at the top, no matter which path you take going up the mountain. Maybe that's the answer too. As long as you keep heading what seems to be higher.
um, you told me that story before about possibly joining the Foreign Legion, and since that, I read some books that lead me to believe that wouldn't have been a good choice, in the sense that those people often were given just the worst tasks,
Oh,
right?
horrible. I mean, it's the kind of people that join outfits like that, especially the Legion. They tend to be either hardcore criminals that are on the edge, or else rogue intellectuals. I mean, you get a strange bunch of people. It's like the same kind of people that join the U.S. Special Forces. They're the same kind of people way on one end of the bell curve. So I don't recommend the military, incidentally, and I think it would be a bad idea because you have to take orders blindly from people that you may not forget about, like, even respect, and you may be forced to do things that are repugnant and you don't want to do, and you shouldn't do, but you have to. And anyway, the military is I think it's about 95% drudgery and boredom and harassment, and 5% extreme danger. And none of those things are very good, frankly.
Yeah. Finally, I think I'll just get your thoughts on this because part of the message you're sending is that you're misallocating time in college, or a lot of people are. And so when I think of my experience, I mean, I was in the science arena anyway, but there wasn't much like extra time, and whatever extra time there was to go out and, as you say, drink and chase girls and whatnot, I actually really needed because school was hard. But where time, I think, could have been better used was just before that. I think when you're 16 and 17, in high school, unless you're, a serious athlete, those people I saw were very busy in high school, whether they were studying and also training very seriously with a professional coach. The rest of us had plenty of time, and that is when a lot of this stuff can actually be done.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
feeling like
right.
the preparation shouldn't be put off until you're 18. It should start maybe when you're 14 or 15. Certainly, the language could be learned as early as 6 or 7. Or earlier. What are your thoughts on that, Doug?
You're absolutely right. I think high school, I mean, when it came to actually learning things, just because of the kind of high school I went to, I went to a 4-year military boarding school and wound up by osmosis or anything else learning a lot. So I learned more in high school than I would have learned in an ordinary school, no question about it. But you're quite correct, uh, because once a young man turns 12 or 13, he's ready for all this stuff. And the sooner, the better. And in high school, you really waste a lot of time because you don't know what to do. So it's good to have some direction, to stand on the shoulders of other people who have been there. And yeah, listen, this would be better for high school than for college, but that's kind of a bridge too far because by the time you're in college, you can pretty much do what you want. Hey, you're of legal age, you can drink, you can vote, all this type of thing. But when you're 14, which is when you really should do it, you need the complicity of your parents. And your parents are generally, cautious and don't want to take risks and all that type of thing. So, yeah, it'd be better to start it at 14, but as a practical matter, pretty hard. Talk your parents into it because you're still under their thumb when you're that age. But I agree.
Okay, I want to, if I can, see if I can do this. Share the table of contents of this book. Actually, I don't think I can do this here. If I can do this and have you talk about the chapters, Doug, because there's some very interesting chapters. And then just briefly, because we're running out of time, tell us what you were trying to do in each one. I'll read them. I don't know if we can see this. It's kind of small, but what are you trying to do in each of these chapters? And let's start with the book list, actually, because you have an extensive book reading list here.
No, it's too extensive. It's so extensive. It's intimidating, and therefore it may be counterproductive. So,
I don't think so. I mean, the person will absolutely have to prioritize it. But what was the basis of the list that you came up with?
well, Matt and Maxim contributed a lot to it also, but I'm a a great believer in reading the classics and things that are of accepted value that have changed the nature of the culture itself. Okay. So listen, as we speak, actually, right now, before I go to bed at night, I'm reading Suetonius's uh, Lives of the 12 Caesars. And it's a hell of a good read. It's really, really interesting. But I don't think many people read that type of thing anymore. So I would direct people to reading things of that nature as opposed to current bestsellers and beach reads and so forth, because they're actually just as entertaining and they can tell you a lot about the way the world works and the way it should work, in addition, than reading current bestsellers, which are, you know, promoted by the worst kind of woke people. I mean, anything that a book that does well today and is well promoted is probably a woke book promoted by wokesters. Like if you Google the 100 most important books, I promise you, I've looked at them actually. I said, let's see if I'm missing a trick. So I looked at those lists that are published on the internet, and they're mostly crap. Like most important books ever written. Ta-Nehisi Coates, this black race hustler, his book occurs everywhere. What the hell's going on here? You know, this is a scam. So anyway, that the kind of books that I recommend are proven classics, and there's plenty of time for reading fun stuff and junk and everything else later.
Yeah, I have to agree with you once again, Doug, that it seems to me that the material that's being pushed on us aggressively, and that would be through bestsellers lists, the bookstore, what I call the glossy hardcover propaganda, movies, the YouTube recommendations. These things are generally not the highest quality. I mean, they may look and feel high quality, but in terms of the ideas, the content, most of the things I want to read, actually, I can't get. I have to go to used bookstores or, believe it or not, the library, Doug. I've been spending a lot of time at the library because some of these big libraries, they have the books that are out of print and the ones that I want to read. So
Yeah, and actually, I prefer reading on paper to reading on the screen because I think even now, but increasingly in the future, you cannot trust what you read on the screen or things that are recently published. Like Huckleberry Finn, it uses the notorious N word all the time. Well, wait a minute. What's wrong with that? I mean, uh, these things are going down the memory hole, quite frankly. So,
yeah, that's a really good point that you make. Because you bring this stuff up, and obviously there are groups that are offended by the language naturally, but there's also another group that's offended because they want to forget that ever existed. Um,
well, this is why the U.S. is falling apart because we don't share a common culture anymore at all, and people revel in the fact that that it's it's gonna it has the potential to end very badly, and they despise people that don't agree with them today. I mean, blue people can't talk to red people anymore.
that's right. That's right. Okay, I want to put the link, you guys. Please check out his book. It's called The Preparation. We have a special link at casey.ruralclassroom.com that basically takes you to the site where you can take a look at it and purchase it if you like. I'll be back next week with Matthew and Maxim. Doug, I want to thank you for spending time with me. It's I've been meaning to have you on for a long time. It's just that everyone's busy and stuff, but I'd love to have you on to talk about just the other stuff that we like to talk about, investments and politics and society, other things.
Yeah, we can
Back in the
talk.
classroom, it'd be great.
I agree. I enjoyed talking to you. We can talk about the world, the devil, and the flesh the next time. I mean, anything. It's just fun chatting with you.
Fun chatting with you too, Doug. Thanks for making the time. Guys, thanks for joining us. This recording will be at ruleclassroom.com. Please join us every week for live streams with Rick Rule and other experts in investing and natural resources sector like Joe Mazumdar, Adrian Day, and Joel Littman. Until next time, take care.